Hi, my name's Lucy Clark and I am the editor of the news and opinion website The Hoopla, and I have been a journalist for almost 30 years. I've moved through newspapers in Brisbane and Sydney and around the world actually on newspapers and magazines, and spent most of my almost 30 years in journalism in traditional media, and almost a year ago I made the transition into online media. Well, obviously, the last few years, the downturn in business for traditional media with the advent of online media. Our old traditional media is really struggling with the changes, and they have been for some time. So that great shift from traditional media to online media has really shaken things up a lot. It's been very interesting as someone working inside the media to work out how you fit in there when you've only got a traditional media background and you have to adapt or die, really. I've noticed a lot of colleagues of mine have, they've resisted it, and others have embraced it, and the ones who embrace it are the ones who, are getting work. It's very sad for people who have been working in traditional print media for a long time to find that their incredibly fantastic skills come secondary to the digital media skills that everyone asks you if you've got these days. Well, it's the idea that news is channeled in a different way these days, because you don't just go to a newsagent and buy a newspaper or an article or a document anymore. You're online and people are travelling across the news landscape in a different way. You have to think a little bit differently about the stories you present and how you present them. Everyone talks about cut through and clickability, and people are very quick to move on. It raises the stakes in terms of you've got to be so interesting, and you've got to get to it faster. Basically, the way you communicate is very different. So I came on board as the editor of The Hoopla about 8 months ago. They started 2 years ago as an online magazine for women sort of 40 plus, because they felt that demographic, which is a very powerful demographic, didn't have their interests and needs addressed by traditional media, and they wanted to sharpen up their news coverage, and that's what I've been doing. Well, I had left the Sunday Telegraph as a literary editor, where I had worked for a really long time, and I was freelancing, and I much prefer to be involved with working with a team towards a common goal rather than working on my own as a freelance. I'm also at a stage of my career where I wanted to guide content and not just be a content provider. Have some fairly major input into the way we communicate at The Hoopla and reach our audience. One of the most fascinating parts of my job is that engagement with the audience, and we get feedback and we respond to that. We're engaged in a conversation. I mean, that's the fantastic thing about online media, is that you are getting this feedback, and you can react to it and think about what you're doing and the way you communicate. Online media now has really changed that localised sense of the way things are done, and I think actually it's becoming more homogenised, because we watch how they do things at Slate and Salon, and we think, oh, that's great, maybe we'll do that on the Hoopla. So we're not in this bubble anymore. And I had a